Where did the stone statues on Rapa Nui Island come from? Rapa Nui Island of Chile is one of the most isolated places on Earth. It lies in the vast South Pacific Ocean, about 3,700 kilometers from the coast of South America, and over 1,000 kilometers from the nearest inhabited island. When this island was first discovered, there were already two distinct inhabitants. One was a group of primitive Polynesians living in a state akin to early human civilization, and the other was a collection of massive stone statues, sophisticated sculptures that clearly belonged to an advanced civilization. The islanders at that time lacked both the sculpting skills to create such refined stone art and the maritime technology to transport such structures across vast oceans. This raises a puzzling question. Who created these statues? Why were they made? These questions have cloaked Rapa Nui in a veil of mystery. Without the statues, Rapa Nui would have been just another ordinary island in the Pacific Ocean. The history of Rapa Nui's discovery is relatively recent. In 1722, the Dutch became the first Europeans to set foot on the island. They arrived on April 5th, which happened to be Easter Sunday, so they named it Easter Island. It was a striking name for such a lonely, remote land. The name Rapa Nui, meaning Island of Stone Statues, was later given by the local islanders themselves. Over the following decades, Spanish and other European explorers visited the island several times. What amazed these explorers most was that a small and lonely island in the middle of the ocean still had living inhabitants. Even more astonishing were the hundreds of giant stone statues scattered across the island. Despite its remoteness, the island became known worldwide for these peculiar stone figures. The islanders call the statues Moai. The most distinctive features of the Moai are their unusually long faces, slightly upturned noses, thin protruding lips, broad and tilted foreheads, and large drooping earlobes. Their bodies often display carvings of flying birds, with arms hanging down on either side. These artistic elements give each statue a unique character, making them instantly recognizable. Some statues even wear cylindrical red hats called pukao, resembling pink crowns from afar, which add an aura of nobility and grandeur. However, not all statues wear the red hats. Only about 30 of them do. These are scattered across the island, 15 in the southeast, 10 in the north, and 6 in the west. These crowned statues stand like aristocrats among the commoners. These statues have become symbolic of this lonely island at the edge of the world. But while the Moai are celebrated, they continue to raise difficult questions. What do they represent? How could primitive islanders, using only crude tools, have created such monumental works of art? For over 2 centuries, these mysteries have drawn anthropologists, ethnographers, geologists, archaeologists, and cultural researchers to the island in hopes of uncovering the truth. Yet when asked, the islanders themselves had a surprising response. They didn't know. No oral history or tribal memory existed about the creation of the statues. None of the living inhabitants had been involved in their construction, meaning they were just as puzzled as we are. These giant stone statues, endlessly described in travel logs, diaries, and documentaries, have only grown more mysterious over time. Without them, Easter Island might have remained as quiet as any other Pacific islet. But since the rise of photography and home video, the statues have been broadcast to homes across the world, yet their secrets remain unsolved. Why were they made? What were they for? Experts ask, how were they created? Historians wonder, when were they made? Anthropologists ask, what culture do they belong to? What do they symbolize? All the statues share a consistent form. Long, narrow human faces with vacant expressions, suggesting they were made according to a standard template. Their unique artistic style, not seen anywhere else, suggests the statues were local creations, not influenced by outside cultures. However, some scholars point out similarities between the Moai and stone carvings from ancient Andean or Mayan sites in Mexico's Tinacoa region. Could ancient Mexican culture have influenced Easter Island? It seems unlikely. Easter Island is thousands of kilometers from Mexico, and the Moai statues are massive. Even the smaller ones weigh around 2.5 tons, while larger ones can weigh up to 50 tons. Some statues also wear stone hats, which alone weigh several tons. So how were they quarried, shaped, and transported across the island, then erected to stand so firmly upright? More puzzling still, when explorer Jacob Roggeveen arrived on the island, he noted there were hardly any trees, meaning wooden rollers could not have been used to move the statues. So how were they transported? And how were the massive stone hats, weighing 2 to 15 tons, placed on top of the statues? Such a feat would seemingly require cranes. But with no trees, even basic wooden tools would have been scarce, let alone advanced lifting devices. And what about the workforce? Moving and assembling these colossal figures would have required thousands of strong laborers. But in ancient times, the island had only a few hundred native inhabitants living primitively. There was no way they could have supported a workforce of 5,000. The island had almost no arable land, few fish, and limited food sources, barely enough to support basic survival, let alone large-scale construction. Even today, with only around 1,800 residents, many daily necessities must be imported. Some theorize that religious forces may have driven the islanders to create these wonders, but the native people had no organized religion. It wasn't until the second half of the 19th century that French missionaries arrived and slowly introduced Roman Catholicism. So what faith, if any, do the statues represent? Standing with their backs to the island, gazing solemnly out to sea? Even the islanders don't know. In her memoir, the female team leader of a British museum expedition, Skoksobe Rotoli, wrote with emotion and awe, "There's something about the atmosphere on the island. It gives us the sense that something vast and majestic once existed here, but is now lost. But what was it? And what was it for?" Where did the civilization on Rapa Nui Island come from? According to conventional logic, the rise of a civilization is a complex process involving multiple elements. This means that Rapa Nui Island shouldn't have only giant stone statues. It should also have religion, belief systems, mythology, legends, and other markers of civilization, like a written script. According to Roggeveen's memoirs, when he and his crew landed on Rapa Nui, they discovered many wooden tablets scattered around the statues engraved with strange hieroglyphs. These symbols were bizarre, completely different from ancient Chinese, Indian, or Egyptian hieroglyphs. The figures had a symbolic style, with rough yet deliberate carvings, shallow or deep, seemingly carrying specific meanings. When viewed as a whole, the arrangement of symbols resembled some kind of coded writing, almost like a rhythm or cadence could be felt in the composition. Later, when Western missionaries arrived, these wooden tablets were all burned. The missionaries claimed the inscriptions were demonic spells. This incredibly ignorant act is now deeply regretted by modern scholars. As a result, only 10 inscribed tablets remain today, preserved in museums around the world. Despite the use of modern computing to decipher them, the writings remain undeciphered to this day. Rapa Nui, a lonely volcanic island far from any continent, seems to have never been visited by any major mainland civilization. Yet somehow the islanders managed to create a written language that no one has been able to understand. This is deeply puzzling. Normally, if a people can invent writing, they also develop other aspects of civilization alongside it. But aside from the massive statues, no other corresponding cultural artifacts have been found. The people of Rapa Nui show a complex range of skin tones, suggesting a mixed population from various ethnic backgrounds. However, Roggeveen noted that when he arrived and saw the statues and tablets, there were only a few hundred inhabitants on the island. That few people, with such apparent racial diversity raises serious questions. Modern scholars of Pacific history believe the statues should be categorized under Polynesian culture, mainly because the language of the islanders retains the phonetic patterns of South Pacific islanders, as noted by Captain Cook. This suggests that the Rapa Nui people originated from Polynesia. However, other scholars argue that Rapa Nui is located far from Asia and much closer to South America. Broadly speaking, Polynesia was settled relatively late in human history, no earlier than the 9th century. Archaeological findings show that Rapa Nui wasn't inhabited until around the 14th century, with most scholars agreeing that human settlement didn't occur until the 1500s or 1600s. That means from the time humans first arrived to when the Dutch first set foot in 1722, the time span was just over 100 years, far too short for such massive stone monuments to have been constructed. That idea seems implausible. Clearly, the mystery of Rapa Nui might be unraveled through the lens of anthropology. In comparing religious practices, scholars discovered that Rapa Nui had a birdman cult, similar to art and carvings found in the Solomon Islands. In those islands, depictions of birdmen feature human bodies with bird heads, large round eyes, and long curved beaks. Similarly, in cultural practices, Rapa Nui rituals involve the host shaving their head and painting it red, while in the Solomons, people dyed their hair red, a long-standing and widespread custom. Scholars argue that Rapa Nui's birdman worship may have been influenced by traditions from the Solomon Islands. Additionally, both Rapa Nui and the Melanesians from the Solomon Islands had the practice of ear stretching. Roggeveen reported seeing islanders whose ears drooped all the way to their shoulders. This feature also appears in Rapa Nui's stone carvings. Many of the giant statues have elongated earlobes. The same is even more common in Solomon Island sculptures. However, these fragmented clues aren't enough to form a definitive conclusion. Some researchers argue that Rapa Nui's birdman cult may have originated in South America. The practice of ear stretching was also common among the ancestors of the Inca. Thor Heyerdahl, having successfully sailed across the ocean in a primitive raft, argued that the Rapa Nui people came from Peru. The debate remains unresolved. Yet the statues of Rapa Nui strongly resemble those found at Tiahuanaco in the Andes. The giant stone statues there also display similar severe expressions and construction techniques, suggesting a shared origin. But these two places are separated by mountains and thousands of kilometers of ocean, over 400 kilometers apart. With such distance and natural barriers, how could cultural exchange have occurred? In 1531, Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro invaded the Inca Empire in what is now Peru. When he asked local Andean people about Tiahuanaco, they claimed no one remembered the once glorious ancient city. It had already been lost to history. The ruins suggest the city was built during a time when humanity was still in the primitive darkness of prehistory. These remnants raise the question, were Rapa Nui statues influenced by Tiahuanaco? If so, then who brought the design, stone carving methods, and lifting equipment to a small remote island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? Clearly, the native islanders did not possess such capabilities. So who transmitted this advanced knowledge? Today, Easter Island, Rapa Nui, has a population of around 7,750, with about 60% being descendants of the original Rapa Nui people. But when Roggeveen arrived, there were only a few hundred inhabitants. The island lacks forests, making gathering impossible. Hunting was not an option either. Only a few birds and rats existed. The locals survived by diving and fishing in shallow coastal waters. To their eyes, beyond the ocean, sun, moon, and stars, there was nothing else. Ignorance goes hand in hand with isolation. Yet these people called their homeland Tepito o Tehenua, meaning the navel of the world, a claim both bold and astonishing. But imagine stepping far away from Earth and looking down from high above. From space, Rapa Nui lies in the very middle of the Pacific. It could indeed be seen as the center of the world. The navel. Could the islanders have once risen to such heights to see this for themselves? Unlikely. More likely, someone from above looked down and told them so. Then who was that? That's where the mystery opens. To rise above Earth, one must ride a flying object. Ancient humans could not have built such craft. The only logical explanation would be beings with superior intelligence, extraterrestrials, who once visited and shared their knowledge. Thank you for watching and listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep exploring more mysteries in our next videos.